Greetings from the great state of Georgia. Been a big fan of the channel since the very beginning and have even been inspired to pursue my own private pilot training. Congrats, Mott. Congrats. I'm almost fully wrapped up with the process with a check ride scheduled for early June. Nice. While I totally get why we train what we train, one thing never made sense to me. I already know what you're going to say, probably, because there it is. I see it. And that is the navlog. Why on earth are we still bothering with this ancient tradition in 2024? Good question. No one on the planet, including myself, has the right to tell you that that's not a good question. So you're thinking, and that's good. But there's also a great answer, by the way, so hang tight. I'm sure there's more to it than I'm making sound, but still an anomaly to me. Would love your take on this, as you always have a special way of breaking things down and explaining them in ways I can easily understand. Why, thank you. Cheers, Jason. And as always, I'm leaving Jason's last name out of this for privacy purposes. Those of you wondering, who the heck is this Jason? What the heck is this email I just read? So if you're new to the channel, this is what I do every once in a while. I go through emails. Even though I try, I don't think I'll ever be able to get through all of them, but I try, and I'll never stop trying. But what I do is I go through emails I receive, and if it's a topic I think that many people could relate to, I go ahead and read it out loud, and then I talk about it. So sometimes it's a question, other times it's a topic people want me to discuss. Today, Jason's concern, a valid one, is why on earth do we still have student pilots fill out navlogs? Now, full disclosure, there's many DPEs today in 2024 who are okay with you showing up without a paper navlog, meaning the ForeFlight could produce a navlog and you just discuss some numbers on there. But still, to Jason's point, there's many DPEs in 2024 that do require a paper navlog. And if you yourself just went through a check ride or have a check ride coming up and you managed to discuss with your DPE what the plan is, let me know. I'm curious. Let others know in the comments below whether or not you needed a paper navlog. But from my personal experience, I did talk with some DPEs who are like, hey, it's cool. Just, iPad's fine as long as we can, discuss some stuff on the ForeFlight's navlog. But then others are like, paper navlog. That's how I do it. So regardless, Jason brings up a great point. One of the reasons I chose to discuss Jason's email is because I know firsthand that this is a topic many student pilots, probably 98% of student pilots, there's probably like 2% of student pilots out there who it never occurred to them that filling out a paper navlog in 2024 is a little odd, and that's great. Just keep doing your thing. But for the 98% of the rest, it is odd, especially if you are training in a newer plane with G1000 and autopilot and GPS. And to get myself from here to where I need to go to, it's just a matter of direct enter, and I'm on my way. There's little calculations we need to do, right? We're not in the 1940s anymore. And all of a sudden, here we are being told that, yeah, even though we're in this great airplane that's outfitted with these phenomenal systems and avionics, we still need to go home and pull out a sectional chart and a plotter as if we're in the 1950s, and it is confusing, and it doesn't add up to many. So, Jason, thanks for your email. Excellent topic. A lot I have to say about it. But I will keep this video shorter than longer because it could be a 10-hour video. There's a lot to say. But let me start with this. The first thing I'll say, and this might shock you when you hear it, and I want you to write this down if you can, if you have a pen and paper with you. The first thing we need to understand about navlogs, in order to not be bothered by needing to fill out navlogs during training is this. The reason we do navlogs, the reason we spend an hour or two at home figuring out the course and the whole thing, the reason we fill out paper navlogs is not in order to figure out how to get ourselves from our airport to our destination airport. And I'll say that again. The reason we bother with navlogs in 2024 is not in order to know which heading to turn to and which lake to look for so I find my destination airport. That is just not why we do navlogs. Because like I said before, to reach my destination airport in 2024, I just need my GPS. Sometimes it's as simple as direct enter. Other times I might have to throw a waypoint or two in there to skirt around some terrain or airspace or whatever it might be. But the reason we do navlogs is not to get to our destination. I want you to get that out of your head. And the reason I'm spending time even saying this is because one of the things that causes people the most amount of frustration, and this is not, by the way, only limited to aviation. This is true in general in life. Frustration often, not always, but often comes from a lack of understanding of why we're doing what we're doing or why something we're doing is even important. It's frustrating when you don't understand. Because if you showed up to flight training, which you maybe have watching this, many people do, which is why I'm spending time talking about it. If you show up to flight training and you're told, hey, let's do a navlog, and you look at the navlog and you go, oh, my first point is my origin, my last point's my destination, and everything in between is pretty much which headings to turn to in order to get there, it's only natural for you to think of navlogs as, oh, this is a tool that allows me to reach my destination. But then you show up to the airplane and there's a beautiful GPS in there, and you go, well, it takes me 2 seconds on the GPS. Why am I spending 2 hours at home? I could figure out how to get my destination, not even using the airplane stuff. I could use my iPad. So that causes a tremendous amount of confusion to student pilots. And the first thing I ask student pilots who talk about being frustrated by this is I turn it around and I ask them, well, why do you think we fill out navlogs? And more often than not, their answer is completely incorrect. Their opinion or thought of why we spend time on navlogs is completely wrong, which is the reason they end up frustrated. So again, if you think that the reason your instructor has you fill out navlogs is so that you too could basically find your way to your destination airport, you'll be nothing but frustrated, because I have a secret for you. We could find your destination airport with zero math in about 2 seconds by clicking about 3 buttons in your airplane, right? And that's an amazing advancement in technology. It's awesome, right? But it's important, and this is why I'm starting with this. It's unbelievably important that we understand what the purpose, what is the reason we are asked to fill out navlogs in training, and we are asked to show up with a navlog to our check ride. We need to understand the reason behind this if we wish to be any less frustrated about the process. Because if you don't understand this, you'll be frustrated again and again and again. Because every time you show up to the plane with a beautiful navlog you spent 2 hours on, and then you look at the GPS and you realize, oh, I could have done that in like 2 seconds in here. You feel like a waste of time. And that's no fun. So we don't want to feel that way. And that's probably a little bit of what, I think it was Jason. That's probably a little bit of what Jason is feeling like. Jason is probably feeling like, what are we doing here? Okay. So we don't fill out navlogs to reach our destination. Excellent. $1 million question, Yoel. Why then do we fill out navlogs? If, Yoel, you said we could actually find our destination in 2 seconds with a click of a button, why in the world are you asking me to fill out a navlog? Great question. So here's why we fill navlogs out. And the more you come to terms with this, the more you will become excited about the opportunity to learn these different things about airplanes. So here's why we fill navlogs out. Through the process of gathering information, researching the sectional chart, coming up with a route, figuring out terrain, looking at winds aloft, figuring out my true course, how that adds up to magnetic course, looking at the variation in my area, looking at the winds and what that might do to my tailwind and headwind and ground speed or crosswind or wind correction angle, looking at all these different small little bits and pieces, elements that all go into making up my navlog. It's through the process of filling out a navlog that we are pulled in 100 different directions, and we are, I don't want to use the word forced, but we're made to go into our POH, checking winds aloft, looking at the weather, looking at terrain on the sectional chart. We're basically, through the process of filling out the navlog, we are naturally pulled in these different directions, and it causes us, we don't have a choice but to do it. We go and we gather all these pieces of information, and all these pieces of information are pieces of information that are important to us as pilots, to know that they exist, how they work, and what effect they have on my airplane. Now here's the thing, and back to navlogs, the FAA wants to make sure that you as a private pilot understand these things. I want to kind of draw a picture that you will, I think at the end of my picture drawing, realize, oh yeah, I could see how technology could mask and cover up opportunities or the need for me as a pilot to learn all these different things. Imagine that all of private pilot training was flying in airplanes with autopilots using GPS systems. And when we taught the student how to get from point A to point B, there was no hand flying, it was all autopilot, and it was all using the GPS, just no math, don't worry about anything, right? That would mask, it would cover up the students', I don't even say motivation, the students' need to go home and study about true airspeed, indicated airspeed, magnetic north, true north. Like the student probably wouldn't even know these things exist. Now, I know there's probably a few out there who might argue, hey, why do they need to know these things? Just have them get in the plane, autopilot, flight level, change it all the way up to their cruise altitude. They'll be stall proof and nothing will happen and they'll reach their destination. That's not what being a pilot is. Being a pilot is knowing how to handle everything when the technology you're using to help you out fails. That's what being a pilot is. So yes, in your real world, real life, you won't fill out a navlog to figure out how to reach your destination. And you'll probably mostly use your autopilot when you fly. But are you a pilot who's ready and able and proficient to handle the airplane when your autopilot fails? Are you able to figure out how to get in and out of airports when your GPS fails? Can you read a sectional chart? Can you figure out what terrain looks like on a sectional chart? Imagine it's at night, right? Are you able to figure out what the highest peak in your sector is? There's a bunch of different things that you as a pilot should know, even though we're not using them on a daily basis. That's kind of what goes into being a pilot, right? Being a pilot is having all this knowledge and ability while at that point using technology to our advantage to help us out. Autopilot's very helpful, but can you hand fly the plane when it fails? So back to our navlogs. I don't want to get too much off course here. Back to our navlogs. The reason we fill navlogs out is because through the process of filling out a navlog and filling in all the information that your navlog asks for, it's in that process that we're going to learn about indicated airspeed, true airspeed, ground speed, calibrated airspeed, and how they each interact with each other. Why is my true airspeed higher than my indicated the higher up in the atmosphere that I go? Right? That's something that should come up, and I don't want to use the word puzzle you, but cause you to go, this is interesting. Every time I calculate my climb speed, my climb true airspeed, my VY is X, but my true airspeed is always a few knots higher, right? And that's an opportunity for you to go, well, why is that? that's an interesting little thing. Like, what's going on there? And look into it, as opposed to just not even, many don't even realize that's the case. They're just like monkey robots. That's not the idea there. The idea is for you to spend your navlog time learning all these individual elements that make up a navlog, and get all this rich knowledge as to how the world works, how airplanes work, how true north and magnetic north work, how the sectional chart is laid out in reference to true north, the North Pole. But we actually navigate in the airplane using a magnetic compass, not a true compass. So if you think about it, I'm drawing a line. And again, I don't want to get too deep into navlog stuff because that might be for another video. I just want to answer Jason's question. If we're drawing a line on a sectional chart, which is a map that is laid out in reference to one type of north, and then I'm jumping in my plane and I wish to replicate that line or fly over the ground just like I drew that line in a plane that has a magnetic compass, there's an issue there. I drew the line on a true chart. I'm flying the plane with a magnetic compass. The two don't speak the same language. Oh, variation. I remember my instructor talking with me about that. Yeah, that makes sense because if I'm on the west coast of the United States, magnetic north falls to the right of true. So to go from magnetic to true, I need to go counterclockwise, bring it back up. That's why we deduct on the west coast. Got it. Oh, on the east coast, magnetic falls to the left of true. So to go from magnetic to true, I need to come clockwise. I need to add. Oh, that's why we add on the east coast. It's these pieces of information that you will be learning during your navlog period in flight training. You got to get rid of this idea, this notion that you were filling the navlog to find our destination. I'm the first one to tell you, we don't need the navlog to find the destination. I could find my destination anywhere in the world using my iPhone without any math, okay? We don't need it for that. So why do we do the navlog? To learn all about these small little, seemingly unimportant, but very, very important to the foundation of yours as a pilot to understand. How does wind affect the airplane, right? If the wind's coming from behind me at cruise, how does that affect my flight? How does that affect where I need to point the plane? Right? So if it's directly behind me, maybe there's no crosswind, so the wind correction angle stays at 0. But what does that do to my ground speed? Oh, it picks my ground speed up, right? So I'll reach my next checkpoint sooner. I'll burn less fuel on that leg. Or maybe the wind's coming from my side, so there's no headwind and no tailwind. My ground speed is just like my true airspeed, but now I have wind correction angle. So I need to point into the wind if I don't wish to drift off course. The final thing I'll say about navlogs, which is very, very important and actually something that we use in our day-to-day lives. And if you don't learn this in navlogs, you probably won't ever master this because there's no other time in training where you're forced to actually do this. And hopefully your instructor is holding you to this standard and helping you with this. And that's the topic I talk an enormous amount about in my videos of pilotage versus dead reckoning. There's few things that you will cement into your brain, into your pilot brain more than pilotage versus dead reckoning. Than when you actually fly navlogs, because that's what navlogs are. So the idea of a navlog is, and I'm now going from the planning phase of the navlog, which I discussed up to this point, and I'm now in the airplane, assuming we're flying that navlog. Literally, how we fly navlogs is this. I reach a checkpoint. I turn my heading bug if I'm autopilot coupled. Otherwise, I literally turn to the heading that I calculated next on my navlog. But then what do? I don't keep heads down. I don't get distracted. My eyes are out the window and I'm looking out the window and I'm fishing visually for my next checkpoint. Now, why am I doing that? Because it could very well be that since I planned the navlog, which could have been yesterday, the winds completely changed from what I planned to what they currently are. They changed, completely different. And if I'm not looking out the window to get a visual on my next checkpoint and I'm just trusting this heading that I'm on, guess what my plane could be doing? I could slowly be drifting off course. And if I never learned that my navlog checkpoint should not be more than about 15, 20 miles apart, then I can't see my next checkpoint visually. And what that means is I won't really notice or know that I'm drifting off course. And the issue is not the issue is not drifting as much as it's what happens after drifting. So imagine your next checkpoint is 30 miles out and we're drifting. When you planned the navlog, you remembered that the checkpoint after the one we just passed is literally at the 12 o'clock of meaning you're not changing courses, assuming you're going in a long straight line with different checkpoints. So in your brain, as a brand new, you're not even private pilot, you're a student pilot. In your brain, you're thinking that the checkpoint is going to appear at your 12 o'clock. It's going to appear in front of you. So what happened? We passed our checkpoint. We're on that same heading, assuming we didn't turn, and now we're starting to drift. Okay? And we're drifting off to the right. The more off to the right that we drift, where's my next checkpoint going to be in relative to me out my window? Well, it's no longer straight in front of me, it's off to my left because I'm drifting off to the right. And what happens is if you drift with strong enough winds that were not anticipated because they changed, you did not account the wind correction angle into your navlog. If the winds are strong enough and I'm drifting and your checkpoint is far enough apart, now what happens 10, 15 miles in after you drifted, guess where you're still looking? You're looking straight out. Guess where your checkpoint is? Off to the left. What are the chances of you seeing it? Slim to none. Especially now this might sound obvious to you when we're talking about it, but if you're in a plane and there's the pressure to do good on the navlog and your instructor's looking at you and you want to do good and you're a student pilot and there's ATC and there's distractions going on, not that easy to remember to add up these what I'm talking about and to go, oh, the wind's coming from my left, I'm drifting to the right, my checkpoint will fall off my left, and the student pilot will typically keep looking forward and not find it. So back to the whole pilotage dead reckoning. It's during this navlog phase that you, if you choose to, could really and should hone all these different skills, which seems so, what do I need it for, right? I have GPS. But let me tell you something. Every single time for the rest of your life when you fly VFR, I don't care if you show up to an airport on GPS, eventually there's a point where you'll have to lay eyes on your airport, your destination airport, visually. And we land visually, right? And so there's a transition that happens between flying the airplane with your avionics to looking out the window and finding your airport. I'm not even talking about the enormous amount of situational awareness that increases, that comes along once you've laid eyes visually on your airport out the window. It's tremendous. But that's literally the same thing. That's going from dead reckoning to pilotage. So we pilotage pretty much on every single flight. So don't underestimate the power of the skill of transitioning from dead reckoning to pilotage, but it's during this navlog phase, and this is just one example of many, of things that you learn to do as a pilot. It's a skill that you've never done in your car. It's a skill you don't do on a motorcycle, but now it's a skill that will serve you on more flights than you actually think, because unlike many things on the navlog that you might not think about for the rest of your life, dead reckoning and pilotage is something we do without even thinking about it. It's just we do it on many, many, many flights. I would argue on every flight. Every VFR flight involves some amount of dead reckoning and pilotage. So back to the whole navlog thing. Jason, I know it's weird. You're looking at a piece of paper and you're plotting courses but I want to make sure that the goal, the purpose of navlog is clear to you. We're not filling a navlog out to find our destination. You could calm down. When you become an actual pilot and you've learned all these things that I just mentioned, now enjoy your GPS. Use your GPS. In fact, I'll go further and say, if you do fill out navlogs to find your destination as a pilot, I'm the first one to call you weird, okay? It's weird, it's odd, and that's not what's expected of you. Your plane has beautiful avionics, use it. But if we jumped straight to the avionics and skipped the process of learning all the different small little pieces of the navlog, how do we calculate ground speed and distance, and how does this affect that, right? If I have a tailwind, I'm flying faster, I'm going to cover the same distance in a shorter amount of time. If we don't use this time to learn all these different skills, we never will. It's one of those things where we typically won't go backwards in life and learn and do some picking up of material that we neglected. It just doesn't work that way. It's one of those things you either learn it now or you never will. And the more you learn it now, the more good you'll feel about all the topics as a whole. And I promise you, it might not come to serve you in a direct navlog way in 5 years, but knowing how to calculate time, fuel, distance, because you've done it so much with navlogs, will serve you even if you go to the airlines. These are skills we don't just throw away once we pass our check ride. So the biggest thing I could tell you about frustration as it comes to navlogs in 2024, and I'm saying this because I know this, people reach out to me all the time and say, yo, why in the world do we do navlogs? This is why we do navlogs. The more you understand the purpose of them, the less frustrated you'll be by them, and the more excited, quite frankly, you'll become about learning every single topic and element that goes into making up a navlog. And challenge yourself when it comes to the dead reckoning and the pilotage, right? We always want to be on pilotage. Pilotage is how you walk in your house. You don't walk in your house looking down at your phone and following predetermined headings, right? You see the wall and you avoid it. You see the door you want to walk through, you walk to the door. You walk through the door, right? We pilotage. That's how we're familiar with it in all other areas of life. And that's how you want to fly your plane. So sometimes we don't have a choice. We need to dead reckon because we don't yet see the point we're going to. So we have no choice but to trust and rely on the heading that we calculated yesterday on our kitchen table. But knowing how the atmosphere and the world works and the weather and how things could change, I wouldn't trust that much. The thing I would trust, which by the way is the oldest form of navigation, is seeing something with my eyes and moving towards it. Okay, that's how we land an airplane every single time. I see the runway, I see the center line, and I place my plane right on center line and I touch down. You can't beat pilotage, the greatest and oldest form of navigation. But guess when you learn all these things? It's during your navlog phase of training. So appreciate it, take it in, cherish it, because it won't come again. I promise you, you won't spend navlog time 20 years from now. I can promise you that. So enjoy this time, master the navlog, get excited by it. And once you've learned all these things, I promise you, sitting and talking about navlogs with people becomes a lot less intimidating once you make peace with it. It's all the frustration that causes resistance, and it doesn't help anyone. So you got to get it done. You got to do it. Might as well come to terms with it. Anyhow, Jason, appreciate your email. I'm sure many will relate to this topic, as I know they do by just talking with student pilots out there. But remember, the more you understand the purpose, the more at peace you'll be with it. And I suspect you might even begin enjoying your navlog experience and training. So hope this helps. Till next time, you guys, fly safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Hey guys, it's Yoel. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it answered some of your questions, confusion, whatever it might be that I was able to help you in your own flight training journey. If you did enjoy the video and you did find it helpful, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel and like the video. What that does with the YouTube algorithm is it kind of lets the AI way of letting YouTube know that there's some interest here and there's some helpful information for others, and that way YouTube will share this with other students or people who are going through flight training just like you. So if you do those things, it always helps, and I do appreciate it. Secondly, if you also have a topic, a question, a topic, a concern, confusion, whatever it might be that you want me to talk about on these videos here, go ahead and email me. There's an email in the description of this video below. So if you click on the description of the video, you'll see an email. Email that email with your question or topic, whatever it is you want me to talk about. And in the subject line of the email, write Ask Yoel, because this series is what I call Ask Yoel. So that way when the emails come in, we're able to separate them and know that your email is a topic you want me to discuss on these videos. Anyhow, hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.